Okay, this is good. I'm encouraged. Come on up. You can go ahead and have a seat. See, this way I get to sit and I don't have to stand the whole time. Maybe that means I'll go even longer, right? Jim Dyes is really encouraged by that. Okay, so you guys have all thought of something that you're grateful for. You came up here because you have some things you're grateful for, right? You know what we're going to do? Let's scoot this back. And then let's have some of you guys down at the bottom so that you don't have to sit there. Why don't you all come sit up here? Okay, so real quick, as we get situated here, do we have the slideshow on? Okay, so I did want to say that Melva is here. She was baptized 2 weeks ago. Melva Sapp, she's right back there. If you want to stand. Melva, welcome. We welcomed you last week, but you were homesick, so we just had to make sure we got you to stand, and everybody can give Melva a hug today. You're going to get lots of hugs today, so congratulations on your decision, and we're just very encouraged by your faith. The other person we wanted to recognize was Cindy, who's back here. Cindy Ong. So Cindy, if you want to stand. And she was baptized about a week ago, part of the campus ministry, student at Lipscomb. And so we're just always really encouraged when people make those decisions. So, okay, let's see. Let's have, would you guys want to come sit over here? Sit up on top a little bit more so that everybody can see you? Or down there is fine. Okay, so who has something that you feel like you're grateful for? Does somebody? Okay, I think you were the first one to come up here on stage. So why don't you tell us what your name is, and then tell us what you're grateful for.
I'm grateful for my mommy and my brother.
And what's your name?
Zayden, and I'm 6 years old.
Zayden, 6 for your mommy. Grateful for your mommy and your brother. You don't have to. You don't have to. But do you want to? Okay. Okay, down here. Do you want to tell us what you're grateful for?
My name's Olivia, and I'm 7 years old. I'm grateful for my friends and my mommy and daddy and all my family.
That's amazing. And I just want to say, this is totally spur of the moment. We didn't prompt anybody. So whatever they're saying, they really mean it. Okay, who else would like to share? Okay.
I'm grateful for my mom and dad.
Okay, that's awesome. That's a good thing to be grateful for. You got something?
My name is Ariana, and I'm grateful for my friends and family.
I'm grateful for burritos and my family.
You knew somebody was going to be up here and want to take advantage of having the mic, right?
My name is Gabriella, and I'm thankful for my family and friends. My name is Skylar, and I'm grateful for my family, friends, and food.
Food? That's great. Did you have your hand up? No?
My name is Ricky, and I'm grateful for Legos, Roblox, and my parents.
My name is Miles, and I'm thankful for family, friends, and God.
My name is Caitlin, and I'm thankful for unicorns.
Sandy, that's amazing. I love that. Unicorns. I think we're all grateful for unicorns. Anybody else?
My name is Lola, and I'm grateful for my friends and family. My name is Charlotte, and I'm grateful for my sisters.
Is that everybody that wanted to say something?
My name's Ethan, and I'm thankful for my friends and family and video games.
My name is Dominic. I'm grateful for my mom and dad.
That's awesome. Well done. Good job, Dominic. Way to go, bud. Has everybody shared everything they're grateful for? Did you want to share something? Okay.
I'm grateful for my sister. Right here.
You guys are awesome. Well done. I hope that we can all think about things we're grateful for and mean it just as much. And but I did, since we have you here, I wanted to ask you guys some questions. Can I ask you guys some questions? Can you guys help us out a little bit? So, as a church, we've been talking about Jesus the Good Shepherd. And so we've been talking about this for about the past 3 weeks. And so I was just wondering, like, do you guys, what do you know about a shepherd? Do you guys know what a shepherd is? Okay. What does a shepherd do?
A shepherd looks after sheep.
Shepherds be bad.
How so? Okay. Well, we'll have to explore that a little bit more. Maybe that'll be next week. Anybody else? What does a shepherd do?
Shepherds protect his sheep.
Shepherds protect the sheep. They take care of sheep. They protect the sheep. Okay. Anybody else?
They hold a cane.
What? They hold a cane. Do you know what they do with the cane? No? I think they protect the sheep, right? And they take care of the sheep. Okay. Ricky, you have that? Yeah. Anything else that shepherds do? Okay, so we've established that shepherds protect sheep. They take care of sheep. Do they feed sheep? Right? They make sure they're taken care of. They make sure they have a place to sleep. Did you have something else to add?
In the end, they eat the sheep.
That does happen sometimes. Again, getting into spiritual application there might be a little questionable. Okay. So we've established a lot of different things that shepherds do with sheep. Now, the Bible says that Jesus is the good shepherd, that Jesus takes care of us. So the Bible compares all of us to sheep. So if you guys were to think of yourselves as sheep, who does those things for you? Who takes care of you guys?
God and our mom and dad.
Okay, God and mom and dad. That's great. Were you going to say the same thing? Okay. You got something else? Somebody else takes care of you?
My mommy and my grandpa.
Mommy and grandpa. That's great.
Sometimes my brother.
I think but my sister.
Your sister takes care of you sometimes? Anything but your sister. Okay. There's definitely an interesting relationship there.
God.
God, yeah, God. God takes care of us. And so, again, these are people that we're very grateful for, right? And so we're going to talk for a few more minutes here before we take communion about Jesus the Good Shepherd. But I just want to say I'm grateful for all of you guys and for getting us started this morning and just for the example that you're willing to come up here and share what you're grateful for. We are all very grateful for you as well. So thank you. Let's go ahead and have you guys, if you guys want to go ahead and go back and sit with your parents. It's like sheep, right? So again, thank you for making this the beginning of our time here together amazing and obviously very interesting. It's also just encouraging as I look around to see just how many people are visiting. I know there's a lot of people visiting from out of town. I know over here a lot of the college students, they're off studying other places and back for the holidays. Also really cool to see Damien and Christina Charlie sitting over here. Definitely an extended part of the church family here. And I know that there are many like that. And so just it's just encouraging. It's encouraging to be able to be together, to be family. I hope that's what's emphasized today is that we are family. So this will be a brief time that where we stop and we think about, okay, again, Jesus as the good shepherd, and as we get ready to take the Lord's Supper and take communion. And but we have, as I said, as a church, we've been talking about Jesus as the good shepherd, and we've been talking specifically about just shepherding and what does that look like, and the people that serve as in the role of shepherd or elder in the church. And we've been thinking about, okay, not only who are some people that want to serve in that capacity and some people that feel called to serve in that capacity, but what does it look like for each and every one of us to do everything we can to be like Jesus, to be the good shepherd like Jesus, to look at these passages that we've been asking the church to take a look at and think about, okay, the way that the Bible describes being an elder, being a shepherd, it's not just for a few men in the church, but it's really for all of us to evaluate, am I becoming more like that? And so that's what we've been talking about the past couple weeks, and we're going to continue to explore this as we figure out, okay, what does it look like for the church to mature, but also what does it look like for each and every one of us to mature? So last week we looked in Luke 15, among other passages, right? But we looked at Luke 15 and this idea that Jesus, he describes the good shepherd in many ways as somebody who has 100 sheep and 99 come home and one doesn't. And so this good shepherd goes out to find this lost sheep. We all know this story, right? And just the idea that Jesus was that intentional, that in order to know a sheep is missing, he had to have counted them. And he says, okay, a good shepherd is somebody who knows the people and the sheep, right, that have been entrusted to his care. And the idea that Jesus cares about each one of us that much, and again, asking ourselves, who are the people that have been entrusted to my care, and do I take care of them in the same intentional way? And do I have a heart to go after those lost sheep? Am I proactive and not passive? And often that's what we can be, right? In our concern and care for other people, is we can just kind of wait till there's an emergency, or sometimes in the church we can wait for somebody else to ask us to serve, or to step forward in a certain capacity, and instead of asking ourselves, okay, who are the lost sheep that I should be going after and I should be taking care of? So this paints a picture, right, of somebody who's really wanting to take care of each and every one of his sheep. But the other side of the coin is, well, does that mean that the shepherd is obligated to all the sheep? Because I think that can also happen, right? On the one hand, you can have a picture of leadership or of shepherding that needs to be more proactive in taking care of the sheep. But then, on the flip side, you can have these expectations of leaders and these expectations of elders or of shepherds that aren't realistic. And we can expect them to do everything. And we can expect them to take care of everybody. And we can expect them to be at the beck and call of every single person's needs. And that's also not realistic. And it's also not biblical. And I wanted to share today a passage that I saved from last week. I was going to share it last week, and I decided, okay, let's just save it. And this is a passage I've been reading and rereading and really thinking about. Because if you think about Jesus, he was sent with a very specific mission, right? He was sent with, okay, Jesus, you're going to go, and you are going to be a shepherd, but you're going to be a shepherd to a very specific group of people. In his case, to Israel, right? And obviously, specifically, he chooses these 12 men, and his mission is to walk with and to train those 12 men, and then obviously to go to Jerusalem, as he says, right? And to suffer, and to be crucified, and to be buried, and to be raised. But when it comes to the sheep that are entrusted to him, he has a very specific group of people that are entrusted to him. And it's with that understanding I want you to take a look at this passage with me. And what it shows to me is Jesus wasn't this reactionary shepherd that just felt obligated to everybody. Even though Jesus was the most compassionate man we could imagine, Over and over again in Scripture, it says that he was moved, and he felt sympathy, and he felt compassion. So we know that's a part of who Jesus is, which again is why this passage just grabbed my attention as I think about Jesus, the Good Shepherd. So in Matthew chapter 15 and verse 21, it says, leaving that place was Capernaum, which is in the northern part of Israel. So leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon, which is along the coast, also the northern part of Israel, but Tyre and Sidon are outside of Israel. They're not a part of Israel. And that's important to the understanding of this passage. So he's getting away from Capernaum, and he's going towards the coast and towards a place where there are unbelievers. There are people who have a different faith, and even people who historically have taken advantage of Israel. And again, as you look through the Old Testament, you look through the prophets, you see that the relationship between Tyre and Sidon and Israel it's just not a good relationship. So he leaves Capernaum, he withdraws to the region of Tyre and Sidon. In verse 22, a Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him crying out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. Now, I just want you to picture Jesus wherever he was. It doesn't really say where he was, walking along the road or maybe resting somewhere. And this woman comes up and she cries out to him. And we know Jesus is a man full of sympathy and compassion. So you just imagine this. Like this woman comes up and, hey, Jesus, please have mercy on me. My daughter, she's suffering terribly. And how that must have made Jesus a man full of compassion, how that must have made him feel. And I'm sure that he had this desire to want to take care of the problem. I'm sure that his heart went out to her, which is why in verse 23, when it says Jesus did not answer a word, that just, I kept, as I read through this, I kept kind of getting stuck there, right? Jesus, this man who has so much compassion and sympathy, and he doesn't even respond. Imagine if, maybe you're in the crowd and you see this man who's known as a man of God and known as, a healer, somebody who's got all this power and is doing all this teaching. And you see this woman come up to this man and she cries out, have mercy on me. My daughter's suffering terribly. And this person ignores her. What would you think of that person? We'd be critical. We would think, who does he think he is? What's the matter with him? And Jesus would have been aware of that. And I just think, wow, imagine how that must have made him feel. Not only that I'm ignoring this woman, but that everybody sees this, and everybody's just going to view this as an apathy, as lack of love, as a hardness of heart, as a lack of care and concern for people. That grabs my attention, that Jesus would respond this way. Honestly, it seems really out of character in terms of how we think of Jesus. I don't know what you think about as you read this, but this is here. It's in the Bible. It's the Holy Spirit wanted us to read this and hear it and understand it. So his disciples came in verse 23 and urged him, send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. So it wasn't just a one-time thing. It's not just that she came once and Jesus ignored her and that was the end of the story. This was happening over and over and over again to the point where the apostles say, come on, Jesus. She's driving us crazy. She keeps crying out after us. Can you deal with this? And so it's not just this initial impression, but it's an impression which must have been driven deeper and deeper into the apostles, into the crowd, and even just this feeling in Jesus of ignoring somebody who has a need. And it goes on in verse 24, He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. So what's Jesus' answer? He says, no, listen, I've been given a very specific mission, and I'm going to be focused on that. I'm not worried about pleasing the crowd. I'm not worried about pleasing myself and how I feel about ignoring somebody who has needs. I'm just worried about the job that God gave me to do. And that amount of focus, that amount of self-control, that amount of intentionality is really hard for me to wrap my mind around. In part because a part of my sinful nature is to be a people pleaser. I want people to like me. And so this would be really hard for me to know I'm taking an action that anybody that sees this action, it's going to make them not like me. And yet that's exactly what Jesus does. No, you don't understand. I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. And then what happens next is also incredible to me. It says the woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. Now, it's important here, knelt isn't strong enough. The word that's used here is a word for worship. She knelt in worship. She came before him and she worshiped him. Even though he was ignoring her, even though he hadn't said a word, she comes and she worships. It makes you think about in Luke 18, the passage about the persistent widow. And that this woman just keeps at it. She's asking and asking and asking to where the apostles want her sent away. But then here she's going to kneel and she's going to worship. And again, right after that in verse 25, it says he replies, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Now you think about this as a parent. You know, imagine all the kids that were just on the stage, and if we're having a meal together, and imagine if you were just to take the plate full of food from your child, take it away from them before they've had a bite, and then walk over and hand that plate to the dogs. How would that make your kid feel? You know, that it's not just saying, hey, you know, let's ignore the needs. It's saying, no, there's something very personal here. You would be sending a very personal message to your kid if you said, I'm taking away your food to give it to the pet. And that's what Jesus is saying here. Jesus is saying, I have been given a specific charge, a specific group of people that I'm supposed to be shepherding, and I'm not going to fail in that duty and that responsibility. But then you look at her response. You know, and think about it. He's called her a dog. Like, that's the implication here. Israel is the children, and anybody who's not Israel are dogs. And actually, the Jews of the day actually referred to non-Jews sometimes as dogs. Like, this is something that we know as we, you know, read their literature, that Jesus is just using the language that the Jews used. But it's insulting. And so the story ends with the woman just getting totally upset and calling Jesus all kinds of names and leaving. That's what any reasonable person would do, right? But that's not what she does. In verse 27, she says, yes, Lord. And that's, again, literally what she says. She just says yes. And she says, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. She's not disagreeing with Jesus. She's agreeing with Jesus, but she's taking his analogy. And what she's saying is, Jesus, what you're implying is that you're not powerful enough to feed both the children and the dogs. I'm not even going to argue with you calling me a dog. I'm just going to say, I believe you're powerful enough to feed both the children and the dogs. I don't think you actually have to make a choice between the lost sheep of Israel and taking care of my daughter. So she's actually worshiping Jesus even more, which is why his response In verse 28, Jesus said to her, "Woman, you have great faith." In the Greek, Jesus exclaims, like there's basically it says, oh, woman, you have great faith. Like this grabs Jesus' attention. Like he's surprised. I mean, her response, he's like, "Oh, woman, you have great faith." Because she's demonstrating this incredible faith in who Jesus is. And he says, "Your request is granted," and obviously her daughter is healed from that very moment. There's so much here. There's Jesus' self-restraint, but there's the faith of the woman where Jesus literally is startled, is shocked. I mean, there's this verbal response where he's like, "Oh, I didn't expect that." And I think that's the kind of faith I hope we have. I hope that's how we respond, and that even in this passage, right, her faith is growing, which doesn't really make sense that her faith would grow, but she's going to be persistent, and she's worshiping him, and then she's saying, "No, Jesus, you're powerful enough to do this." But the thing I really want us to focus on and think about as we think about shepherding is once again how intentional Jesus was. That Jesus, he knew that God had asked him to do something very specific. And he was going to make sure that got done. I also think that Jesus is using this whole scene as an opportunity to train his followers. That's why he did it in front of them. What an incredible lesson for them, right? That they could see, okay, Jesus was so focused on what he was supposed to do that he did something that seemed really weird. It seemed really out of character. It seemed really unloving, but he was showing us that when God asks us to do something, we've got to be focused on that. How easy would it have been for Jesus to go anywhere he went and spend all his time meeting all kinds of needs? But that's not what Jesus did. Jesus could have gone right into whatever the hospital was of a town, right? And just spent all his time just healing people and taking care of people, but he was focused on this mission that God had given him. What's the application for us? I mean, I think the first thing is we've got to figure out, okay, what's my mission? What is it that God is asking me to do? Who are the sheep that he is entrusting to me? Obviously, we had a whole bunch of them right here, right? And if we're off, if we're workaholics, and we have our hobbies, and we're letting the world get in the way of teaching, these kids that are up here on stage about how amazing God is, then we're not taking care of the sheep he's entrusted to us. But that's not it. It's not just our kids. God has entrusted something to each and every one of us in here. And it's up to each and every one of us that want to follow Jesus to figure out, okay, God, what is my part? What is my responsibility? What is it that you're asking me to do? And then to make sure we do it. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I can feel like there are so many needs and there are so many things I could do with my time that I feel like I'm not getting any of it done. And so I've got to really stop and pray and ask God, okay, God, what are the things that you're asking me to do? And do I have the kind of focus that Jesus did to say, you know what, I'm going to say no to some things? Because unlike Jesus, I don't have unlimited, ability to be able to meet all the needs. And so really there's two things for us today. What is the mission that God has given me? Who are the sheep that God has entrusted to me? What is it that God is asking me to do? And if you are a follower of Jesus, you've got to have an answer. There's no such thing as a follower of Jesus that's just supposed to show up to church on Sundays. That doesn't exist. Now, at the same time, that doesn't mean that every follower of Jesus has got to do all these things. And so you've got to take a look at yourself. You've got to take a look at what are the things, the gifts that God has given you? What are the obstacles that God has placed in your life? I mean, somebody who's got chronic illnesses, somebody who's got just all kinds of challenges is going to look very different than somebody who doesn't have any of those things and is incredibly healthy and has all this energy. God is asking each of us to do something different. So the point here isn't to try to make anybody feel guilty. The point here is for all of us to try to examine, what is it that God is asking me to do, and then am I doing it? Am I focused on doing it? And I hope you'll go back over this passage, and you'll just think about how this shows us really so much about Jesus that sometimes we set aside, how intentional was, how focused he was. And ultimately, what was he focused on? In the next chapter, Jesus pulls his apostles aside and says, hey, listen, I'm going to have to go to Jerusalem, and I'm going to be beaten and tortured, and I'm going to be crucified, and I'm going to be buried, and I'll be raised on the next day, or on the third day. So Jesus is given this mission that none of us could really honestly imagine or comprehend. None of us are given that mission, and yet he's so focused on it. And as we read through the Gospels, that's the thing that is so amazing, is how he's focused on this mission that God has given him. And that's why, as we think about our mission and we think about what God is asking us, it's so helpful every Sunday to be able to stop and reflect and to have a time to think about, okay, man, God has done so much for me. And I can be so grateful for Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. I can be so grateful for this forgiveness. I can be so grateful for Jesus' example. And as I meditate on Jesus' life, on Jesus' blood, I also want to meditate on, what is my response? Am I living out the mission that God has given to me? Is that really my heart to follow Jesus in that way? So with these things in mind, we're going to take a few minutes here to meditate, to think about these things, to pray, and to take the bread and the cup in gratitude for what God has done for us. So please pray with me. Father, thank you for the time to be together. Thank you for just having some time of fellowship. Thank you for just the kids being able to be here and to encourage us. Father, thank you that we can worship. God, thank you that we can right now take the bread and the cup. Thank you that we can look at Jesus' example, and that you have recorded and given us these incredible examples of how you want us to live, and how much you've paid in order for us to be able to be in a relationship with you, how much the incredible grace that we've been offered has cost you, and how much it demonstrates your love for us. We love you so much, and it's in Jesus' name we pray.